From South Carolina Public Radio, this is the South Carolina Lede. I'm your host, Gavin Jackson, and this episode was recorded on May 5th, 2025, from South Carolina Public Radio Studios here in Columbia. On this episode of The Lede, we preview the final week of the legislative session for you, dear listener.
Thank you.
We're talking about what major bills are where and what will have to wait until the 2026 session. The Russ McKinney has that report for you, plus more on this final week. And we have some state party news, including which rising star is headlining a Democratic fundraiser this month and who the Republicans chose as their state leader this weekend. It's almost like the Hunger Games. Speaking of, the Conclave to select the new Pope convenes on Thursday, and we talk with a USC history professor who has been watching the papal developments from Rome. Also, like I've been asking you all in previous episodes, the Emmanuel 9 are part of our shared history, and 10 years later, their legacy still shapes who we are. That's why SCETV is asking you to take part in Voices Collected. Visit scetv.org/Emmanuel9 and help us honor the past while building a stronger, more connected South Carolina. That's your way of sharing your experiences with the Mother Emanuel tragedy that happened 10 years ago this June. But we want to hear from you as well when it comes to our wind down section, and you can do that by giving us a shout at 803-563-7169. That is our voicemail box where you can share what's on your mind. Let us know what you're thinking about. It's almost summer. May the 4th be with you. Let us know some of the issues that maybe didn't go the way you wanted to this legislative session. 803-563-7169. Anyone talking about medical marijuana? Exactly. Let's look at what's on tap for this week at the State House. Again, it's the final week of the 2025 legislative session. We'll have more on what to watch in a moment. Up in Congress, well, they're in session this week as well. And on the economic calendar, the Federal Open Market Committee meets this week to determine interest rates, and they're probably going to stay steady. But we'll hear from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell on Wednesday about that. Okay, we, you, me, us, the royal we have made it to the end of the legislative session. Congratulations, Bill. You're gonna be a law, or not so fast, actually. I'm looking and, well, you're still stuck in committee like all the hundreds of other bills that have not made it out of committee. That's how the session goes sometimes. But we know officially come 5 p.m. Thursday, that is when the House and the Senate will gavel out Sine, which is Latin for without day. If a bill is not passed by both chambers and changes confirmed and off to the governor's desk by 5 p.m. Thursday, then the bill will remain in limbo until lawmakers come back for the second and final year of the 2-year session on the second Tuesday of January, which will be the 13th for planning purposes. Now that you know the stakes, let's get you a primer for this week. Last week we had friend of the pod, Mayan Schechter on, and this week we bring you the Russ McKinney, with this tight 4-minute piece with the highlights of what we'll be watching for and what will be left behind this year.
This is the final week of this year's legislative session, and 2 priority bills have yet to be enacted. The House and Senate haven't reached final agreement on a major energy policy bill, and the chambers still appear to be at odds over the issue of tort reform. Lawmakers have struggled for weeks with how to reach a tort reform compromise. With just 3 days left in the session, Judiciary Committee Chairman Weston Newton of Beaufort County says the House is committed to a bill it passed that would decrease the cost of liquor liability insurance for owners of bars and restaurants.
I think there is a general consensus that none of us need to leave here without trying to do the most that we can and the best that we can for our bars and restaurants.
Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey of Edgefield indicated on Thursday he's hopeful for a tort reform agreement that includes part of a Senate bill aimed at lowering insurance costs by primarily focusing on the amounts of damages juries may award in cases involving multiple defendants.
I'm hopeful, but I recognize there's 3 days. I also recognize that miracles happen up here in 3 days. So we're still talking, but we're not quite there yet.
The House late last week gave final approval to what its leaders billed as a compromise energy bill. The goal of the bill is to ensure that utilities can meet the future needs for the fast-growing state. But the bill is back in the Senate, where there is considerable support for ensuring that large power users, such as data centers, don't require residential customers to share in those costs. The House version of the bill dropped that requirement. Lawmakers were able to pass two major bills this session. A bill is on the way to the governor that once again sets up a publicly funded voucher or scholarship program that low and middle income parents can apply for student tuition at private and religious schools. Last year, the state Supreme Court ruled that a similar program violated the state constitution's prohibition of spending public tax dollars for the direct benefit of private institutions. Republican lawmakers hope the new plan will get around the court's recent ruling. Governor McMaster has already signed one of this year's major bills into law. 3 mental and behavioral health agencies are now consolidated into one new cabinet agency. South Carolina now has 22 cabinet agencies reporting to the governor. Here's McMaster last week.
This is the most significant restructuring since years ago with Governor Campbell. A lot was done back then, and we've done a lot this time to make these agencies directly accountable to one person, and that will be the governor.
The state's mental and behavioral health services are reported to be one of the most fractured systems in the nation. On Tuesday, the House plans to debate a bill its leaders say will put the state on a path to eliminating the state's personal income tax. South Carolina Public Radio's Mayan Schechter says they'll be considering a Plan B.
And this comes after lawmakers tossed out their original plan after estimates said it would raise taxes on nearly 60% of filers. The revamped plan would in part drop the top rate to 5.39% for income of $30,000 or more. Under this plan, estimates say only 24% of filers could expect an increase.
But Gaffney's Harvey Peeler, chair of the powerful Senate Finance Committee, says the Senate will not consider the proposed House plan this session. Another major issue that will not be dealt with, the future of State Treasurer Curtis Loftus. The Senate 2 weeks ago voted to remove him from office. House Speaker Merle Smith says the House will not be able to consider the matter this week.
This is the busiest time of the legislative session, and so we're going to have to get through our legislative business and then deal with this business.
The legislative session ends at 5 p.m. Thursday. Lawmakers will have to return in a few weeks, however, to give final approval to next year's state budget.
Thanks, Russ. You can keep up with what Russ, Mayan, and me are hearing and working on by checking out the State House Gavel. Tuesday through Friday during session on southcarolinapublicradio.org. This week we'll close out the inaugural run of the blog that we love. We love you, State House Gavel.
We love you.
Now we'll see if we can piece together a campaign trail version of the gavel just to keep us busy in the off season. That's right. Once the session stops, the campaign trail will start, folks. But let's keep looking at this week.
Okay.
The House has a 16-page calendar heading into Tuesday, and the Senate's is 42 pages long. The difference is the Senate calendar includes dozens of bills being blocked by individual senators, as is their prerogative and ability, including some that have passed the House, such as those calling for a constitutional convention for term limits and a balanced budget amendment. There are layers to this, with Democrats blocking Republican bills and vice versa. But if deals are struck, then all of a sudden things can move very quickly. So a lot of X factors at play, a lot of 4D chess, brah.
Wow.
According to this podcast I've been listening to, it's all about 4D chess. It's all about grinding. Now, there will be a full House Judiciary Committee meeting Tuesday morning just dealing with the Liquor Liability Bill H. 3497. Remember, we are coming down to the wire here, folks. This whole session's been talk about tort reform, liquor liability. The Senate spent 4 weeks on a huge omnibus bill, and now we are at this point where there are 3 days left, and a compromise bill is expected, hoped for, prayed for, as a result of the findings of an ad hoc committee last week in the House that will add a bit more to this bill besides just that liquor liability aspect. This is an attempt to get the Senate to bite and to play ball because they don't want just a liquor liability bill. They want one that also includes joint and several liability. So we're expecting to see that come out of Judiciary tomorrow. So this will help with those increasing insurance rates for bars and restaurants, and also what insurance payouts would look like in lawsuits and who would be at fault, etc. Other than that meeting and the inevitable conference committee meetings on bills that have passed both the House and Senate, well, they need to be tinkered with before they get the full passage of their both respective chambers. So when there's a conference committee, that's 3 House members and 3 senators working out the differences of a bill that has already passed both chambers before it gets to the governor. So a lot of that is going to be happening on the sidelines while folks are in session this week. So we'll be fast and furious, Tokyo drifting throughout the State House this week. And there are also just some other meetings too, getting bills positioned and ready for the January return. There will also be a lot of Senate appointment confirmation votes taking place this week as well, many of which will be on Tuesday, but a big one will be for the governor's pick to lead the Department of Social Services. That's Anthony Cotone. He'll be before the Family and Veteran Services Committee Wednesday morning and likely before the full Senate that day or Thursday. And we will have a full, dedicated Sine pod for you on Saturday with some of your favorite reporters. So stay tuned, folks. You're going to like the way you look. I guarantee it. Speaking of, and 2028 watch.
2028 watch.
Or no, maybe not quite, but still something to watch. Maryland Governor Wes Moore will be headlining the South Carolina Democratic Party's annual Blue Palmetto Dinner on May 30th. The fundraiser is always a buzzy affair where the latest rising stars of the Democratic Party have a chance to get before the key players and activists that are critical to the first in the South Democratic presidential primary. Actually, we were first in the nation, if you remember, in 2024. Now, whether that position holds remains to be seen based on what the National Party does, but the state will be pushing hard for that pecking order. Nevertheless, South Carolina Democrats, like their Republican counterparts, have a strong track record of picking their party's eventual nominee, helping provide a tiebreaker from places like boring Iowa and cold New Hampshire. Yes, it's always a tiebreaker down here, and providing guidance to other southern states that cast their ballots shortly after on Super Tuesday. Now, why am I saying all of these words in 2025 when we're talking about 2028? Here's the kicker. Moore is up for re-election for a second term next year, and he insists to Politico that he is not running for president, and what will be a wide open year on both sides of the ballot in 2028. So it's 2025 right now. We'll see what happens in a few years. Congressman Jim Clyburn's annual fish fry will also be taking place around the dinner, so expect other potential maybe types who might be thinking about running, just feeling the waters, maybe in town as well. You might remember that last May, Senators Cory Booker of New Jersey and Raphael Warnock of Georgia were the headliners at that Palmetto dinner. Those two, as well as Moore, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, as well as then USDOT Secretary Pete Buttigieg and Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, all spoke for South Carolina Democrats at the DNC in Chicago. You know how I know? Because I was there, folks. Okay, I was listening to them. They were warming up the crowd. They're getting ready. Just saying. And not to be left out, state Republicans had a raucous state party convention on Saturday where little things like naming a temporary convention president took rounds of voting that led into complaints over county convention issues. I'm looking at you, Pickens County, which was not seated due to a tainted county convention process. This according to the credentialing committee. Not my words. Now, despite the squabbles and attempts at changing party leadership, Chairman Drew McKissick won his 5th 2-year term to lead the state party. McKissick came up through the party as an activist and has grown it, financially stabilized it, and even flipped statehouse seats and even seats down to the county level. Most recently, First Circuit Solicitor David Pascoe, who has served as chief prosecutor for Calhoun, Dorchester, and Orangeburg counties since 2005, flipped Republican, changing from being a Democrat, and hinted at a statewide run. When he announced his party switch on April 10th, he noted he could be running for Attorney General next year. That's because the current Attorney General, Alan Wilson, is likely going to be running for governor. I saw him at the state convention, as well as Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evett. TBD. We'll be watching. Moving on, but kind of still staying with contentious elections. Yeah, we're gonna stay in this vein here. This week will be the first time in 13 years that the College of Cardinals will meet to select a new leader for the Catholic Church in its worldwide flock of 1.4 billion followers. And despite what the White House posted of an AI-generated image of President Trump as Pope, which has offended many devout Catholics, such as the New York Catholic Conference, which tweeted, quote, "There is nothing clever or funny about this image, Mr. President. We just buried our beloved Pope Francis, and the Cardinals are about to enter a solemn conclave to elect a new successor of St. Peter. Do not mock us," quote. A lot of folks feeling that way or some degree. And this also comes after Senator Lindsey Graham, who's not Catholic, tweeted that Trump would make a good pope. Alas, back to reality. There are 135 eligible cardinals who meet the criteria to vote in the conclave that convenes on May 7th. But 2 cannot make it due to health reasons, bringing the total to 133. That means the next pope will need to secure at least 89 votes, which is the required 2/3 threshold. Now, per the Associated Press, the counties with the most electors are Italy at 17, the United States at 10, Brazil at 7, France and Spain at 5 each, Argentina, Canada, India, Poland, and Portugal at 4 each. So those are some of the top power players right there. We're talking about 89 votes. So a lot of moving, a lot of grooving, a lot of cigarette smoking, wine drinking, incense, frankincense. Okay, so what was all that? That was just some background. And I know you're like, Gavin, why are we doing this? Well, it's going to be a huge story this week, so I wanted to give you some background and now some more information from a South Carolinian on the ground in Rome. USC history professor Carol Harrison, who is also an expert on the church, has been in Rome for the past 7 months, doing research for an upcoming book, and she's also the winner of the Guggenheim Fellowship, one of the world's most prestigious grants for scholars, and the Rome Prize from the American Academy in Rome. So she's kind of a big deal. I was fortunate enough to catch up with her on This Week in South Carolina, where I started by asking her about what it has been like on the ground since the death of Pope Francis on April 21st.
Well, and of course the whole city of Rome followed his illness. I remember talking to a cab driver who told me I knew something was up because he was picking up clients from the hospital where the Pope was staying. And they rerouted the taxis. And so he knew that something was up. So the whole city has been paying attention to Francis's illness. And of course, everyone thought that he was getting better, that he was resting. And everyone was really very happy to hear that he appeared in St. Peter's Square on Easter. And then, of course, Easter morning, the news came, or the Easter Monday, the news came that he had died. And I think that recast everything we had thought about the last few days. It became obvious that he wasn't actually really trying to get better. He was trying to ensure that he died working, that he died speaking to people, that he died as a pastor.
Obviously, with his passing, it's sad, but also I'm sure there's joy too because he's gone on. But there's also a celebration of life too. What has that mood been like too? That sorrow mixed with joy in celebrating his life.
Well, something like 250,000 people lined up to see Francis in the couple of days after his death. I was one of them. I live about a half-hour walk from the Vatican, and I walked down to see him after dinner one night. I had heard, and the official word was that visitation would take place until midnight. I was still in line at midnight. The crowds were enormous. The authorities decided to keep St. Peter's open pretty much all night. There were that many people who wanted to see Francis and to pay their respects. And similarly, the crowds that watched his body process from St. Peter's to the church where he has been buried, Santa Maria Maggiore, across the city, enormous crowds.
So tell me about being a historian and also knowing about the Catholic Church so extensively. What do you see Pope Francis's legacy being at this point?
Well, the Catholic Church is a very, very old institution, and it changes very slowly. So I would be reluctant to make any definitive pronouncements about what Francis's legacy will be. And also, of course, it depends significantly on his successor. But Francis has brought a new style, a new openness, and a new humility, I think, to the church. His emphasis on synodality, on a church that is more horizontal, that is less hierarchical, less inclined to defer to priests, more interested in the laity, and more interested in all kinds of laity, right? Open to listening to women, open to listening to homosexuals, to the poor, to migrants. That's, I think, been enormously significant.
And you mentioned that his successor will play a role in solidifying that legacy. How do you see that playing out in terms of, if it's a more conservative successor or someone who's maybe more in line with him? Does it come down to whether they fall in line with what he did or make a hard pivot in some sense?
Both are possible, right? There may be a new pope who seeks to confirm, strengthen Francis's policies. There may be one who seeks to reverse it. Both are very possible. For many people, as I said, the changes Francis brought were in many ways a matter of style. People who wanted to see, for instance, the ordination of women, either as priests or a smaller step as deacons within the church, were disappointed, right? There was no actual move in that direction. People who hoped to see the ordination of married men as priests in certain dioceses where there are serious absences of priests, they were also disappointed. All of the questions were opened. All of the questions were put on the table. Very few were definitively resolved under Francis. So there's a lot that remains up in the air.
Yeah, like you were saying, it takes a lot of work to make any change in that institution. So even just bringing that question up is just one tick in the direction that someone else could continue carrying that ball in. So with that being said, the upcoming conclave starts May 7th. Tell us about this secretive process as much as you know about it and what we can expect to see over the coming days.
Well, I should say I know no more than the average informed observer. The people who really know what happens in a conclave are the cardinals, and they don't talk about it a lot. We know that this will be a different sort of conclave. This will be a bigger conclave than usual. There will be something like 133 voting cardinals. Most of them have been named by Francis. We know that but I should say that the fact that they were named by Francis does not mean that they are all walking in lockstep with him. We know that there are far more cardinals from the global south, so this will be a less European, a less Western conclave. But exactly what those facts, how they will play out is not at all clear.
Again, that was USC history professor Carol Harrison talking with me on This Week in South Carolina. And like I was saying, why are we talking about this? Because we'll likely have a new pope come this weekend. This doesn't happen every day, every year, every 4 years, folks. This is a rare thing. And just some background, Pope John Paul II was elected on the third day after 8 ballots. Pope Benedict was elected on the second day after 4 ballots. And Pope Francis was elected on the second day after 5 ballots. Welcome to the wind down section, our little break from the news. We're glad you're here. A.T. Shire, lead podcast producer. I'm glad you're here because you're not doing too great today.
I'm gutting it out, people. Thank you for being here.
Things are coming out of you from different places.
Yeah, I'm oozing. I'm gooping. Yeah. It's all over the place. I got the daycare crud. I'm gutting it out though. I showed up. Okay, yeah. I showed up for you people. Okay,
you sound good. It's just I know the insides are just all over the place.
Yeah, I feel sort of okay. It's just all my sinuses are compact so much that tears are just constantly rolling out of my face.
He's weeping.
Yeah, no, Gavin just did such a good episode that I'm basking in its aura and crying. And Gavin, I got to admit, maybe double dipping last week was some bad foresight on my part because we have no calls. This episode.
We're going to wait on the conclave and then we'll have a call, hopefully.
We have an update tracker on the color of the smoke, the lead smoke.
Yeah, they installed the chimney on the
It is
roof.
separate from that conclave. This
right, ours.
Conclave.
Yeah,
this
we have
ours.
well, now that Meg is back from her Georgetown fellowship, we have the Fashion Council back. So there'll be a lot of decisions, especially with the Met Gala. Did the Met Gala happen or is it this weekend?
I don't know. We're not allowed to know. We're also not allowed to talk about it.
I always forget about these
We're
rules.
official podcast.
I mean, of course I know about we're going to be there, whatever. We're going to be smoking cigarettes in the bathroom with the celebrities.
Yeah,
no, we're going to be there. We're going to be there.
We're
Kate
smoking
Moss.
cigs with Kate
No,
Moss.
apparently that's like the cool thing to do at the Met Gala from what I see on Instagram.
Sneaking cigs? So the coolest thing to do at the Met Gala is the coolest thing you can do in high school in 1997. Yes. Yeah, cool. Cool, guys.
Yeah,
That's how detached from reality these people are. I'm going to dress crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm going to smoke cigs in the bathroom.
You'd have to, I don't know how you would even do the Met Gala. Anyone ever been? Call 803-563-7169. Kate Moss, I know you listen.
We know you do.
Anna Wintour, I know.
We know, Anna.
I know.
We know.
You know how I know? Because she sent us some messages, some unkind messages once.
Oh, and she also fashions all of Gavin's clothes. And
Oh, it's
sends
horrible.
Them, yeah, he's got
It's
bespoke
horrible.
clothes. Yeah.
If you think I have,
it looks normal from the front, from the back, it's crazy. It's
I have
nuts.
unilateral power
Yeah.
over this fashion council.
No.
I live in fear of this
everything
woman.
Gavin gets smells like cigars for some reason. We don't know. It's very weird.
Timu.
Anyway, Gavin,
Sheen.
this conclave is happening. I don't know if it's a guerrilla marketing campaign
Yeah.
for the movie Conclave.
I know. I was telling you, yeah.
You have seen it. I have not.
Yeah.
Sell me.
It's great. I've watched it 2 times now.
Double.
The cinematography is fantastic. The acting is fantastic. It's not overboard. There is a big kicker at the end.
Okay. Twist.
There's a great twist.
It's part of the Cloverfield movies.
Yeah, it's actually a whole Fast and the Furious franchise takeover.
Oh, okay. Vin Diesel
Italy.
shows up at the end.
Yes.
I'm here for my friend.
No, if you've seen Angels and Demons, it's the same thing, just rebranded.
Oh, okay.
No,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
fantastic. I didn't know that a lot of Star Wars was also shot, I guess, in a lot of the same venues that they used.
I mean, it's grand in the same way,
Yeah.
so I understand. Yeah.
No, it's fantastic acting. You got Ralph Fiennes, you got
Love-
Stanley Tucci.
Love the Tooch.
Lithgow.
I love the Tooch. I don't like his teeth in the Hunger Games. They're too big. They're
Peter
too white.
died. Oh, when he's that guy, yeah. I wonder if I would be Caesar. I don't think I could be Caesar. He's fantastic in that role, though, because he's just so opposite of what he's like when you watch, like, Stanley Tucci's Italy, right? Like,
I've honestly never seen
I
that.
think you do. It's enough. It's still, I mean, it's...
I just remembered my favorite Stanley Tucci movie, and that
The
is
Tooch.
Beethoven.
Oh, my God. Okay, I'll have to watch that.
That's the first movie I ever saw at Beethoven. I've always told Bradley Fuller just to really throw off any of the classical composers and stuff, and I'd be like,
Do it.
man, the first question to a conductor or something be like, what's it like to conduct music by a dog?
That's I'm sure that goes over just as well as you're like, you got to ask Pete Buttigieg what his AIM screen name was,
Yeah.
which was a great question.
That was a great question.
And he did not answer. The man said, I don't remember. Sir, don't lie to me.
Gavin gave me one question for the whole thing, and that was my question, and it was a hit, honestly.
Yeah.
It was a great little
I mean,
thing.
he's a millennial.
Yeah. He was on AIM.
That's like going back to what we were talking about SAT scores last time. It's like you know your AIM name,
The away messages you
Yes,
had.
like come on,
Yeah.
you know exactly when you got Facebook.
You remember what song you had playing on your MySpace?
I didn't have MySpace, but I'm aware of
You
the concept.
didn't have it.
No,
No.
it was too emo.
No, it
was
wasn't.
just too-
It's what you made it.
Well, it always just kind of seemed.
You were just emo. Okay.
It was not emo, but I would say. Going from pretentious Washington, Montgomery County to like Kent State, Ohio, like at the peak of this is 2004.
Yeah.
We are peak early 2000s emo or about to be there.
Ohio
by
truly,
itself
yeah.
is a capital. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't even visit the school before I went there.
Yeah.
And then all of a
Sight
sudden,
unseen.
everyone has like the swoop cuts.
It's embarrassing.
Everyone's wearing the
It's
girls'
embarrassing.
jeans. I'm like, oh, I got to grow my hair out so I can be cool, I guess. And like, I had a pair of girls' jeans, I think. My friend Joanna gave them to me.
Man, I was so against
But it was they were so hipster. And I was like, there are so many hipsters here. And I'm like wearing a button down to class every day.
The worst part. Oh yeah, of course you were. The worst part is like
it's a T-shirt for me.
Emo music
Emo.
was so good music
It was.
adjacent. You know,
Yeah.
it wasn't good music. It
was
was bad.
okay.
But you very easily could listen to good. Like,
Where
I'm not
are you?
I'm not telling you to listen to death metal here. I'm
Yeah.
telling you to listen to At the Drive-In and Coheed and Mars Volta or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like they're right there. Those are good bands, and they're not crying all the time.
True. I mean, I remember I was like, what is this music? I had never heard this before. And I
Yeah.
was fascinated by it, Like
It was definitely it's when millennials are old and we're in our 80s, there are going to be so many like sociological studies on like Ohio's music scene in the early 2000s.
Trust me, those people are gonna eat it up. Then, my God.
So many of the stuff I see on Instagram is like elder emo kids and stuff, and they're so self-absorbed.
Yes,
and
because they all went to New York and San Francisco.
Scene kids, yeah, and so
The
like
scene kids. Oh
they're
my
gonna
God.
they're gonna teach their kids about it, and their kids are gonna study their parents. Why is Grandpa like that? Well, you have to look at this band called Hawthorne Heights to really understand Granddad. So
They're like,
lame. Listen to
it's
good
so
music.
good. Oh,
It's so lame.
I mean, I feel like I experienced that for sure. And
I mean,
can
you
tell
were there. You
'cause
were on the
it's
ground,
almost,
boots
yeah,
on the
they're
ground.
trying to like equate it to like, the 60s when you had that kind of music making this like
No.
transcend it through the ages where they go back and you look at that era. And no, it's just that whiny emo music.
Yeah, where everyone wore really tight pants.
Everyone was so
Everyone had eyeliner
angry all the
and
time.
crazy hair.
So it
Yeah.
worked, but I was never that. And like, you know me, I don't even own that much black clothing in the first
Yeah,
place.
I try
so
to
it's hard.
to fashion you with black every birthday, which is coming up.
So
I'll
that's
get
why
you
I could
something
never
black.
get into it. I could respect it, but like, you know me, again, like another huge sin for any millennial is pretending to be something you're not.
Being a poser. Being a poser,
Now
which
this
is wrong.
generation is like, yeah, I switch with the wind.
Yeah.
Like,
You'll
no.
pay me for it? I'll be your
Yeah,
spokesperson.
sure.
I don't use it. No, I think we need to instill the fear of poserism
That's-
back into this country.
I still have it.
I absolutely. You can't kickflip. You can't wear that Thrasher sweatshirt. Yeah.
If I were to wear a Thrasher sweatshirt,
People would know.
I would be uncomfortable.
Yes,
to the point where you'd
exactly.
be like, "You're not wearing that sweatshirt. It's wearing you," and you're like, "Yes, this
in the
doesn't make
same
sense to
way
me."
that I can't say y'all because I feel wrong
Yes, you're
attempting it.
cosplaying a Southerner.
Exactly. I'm LARPing. It's stolen valor. Like, take off that Thrasher sweatshirt. You've never
Yeah.
bombed a hill, okay?
Ironically, they're trying to do it, but then
Oh
it's
my
also
God.
like trying to make it also mainstream at the same time, where it's like you're going to go back and say, "Well, this is ironic." Well, it's like no, because you're actually wearing a thing that you do.
It's
like
actually
that.
post
The sublime
irony. We don't know.
smiley face shirt. We're gonna leave it there.
The last thing I want to say
No,
about
Nirvana smiley face. I'm sorry.
It
Go
doesn't
ahead.
matter.
It doesn't matter.
They don't know. They don't know the difference. They bought it at Target. My biggest thing is these generations below us, these Gen Zs
Oh,
and Gen
they're getting
Alphas and
tainted.
stuff.
Tainted.
No, they try to dunk on millennials like
Yeah,
us
go-
all
you
the time.
wish.
All while dressing exactly like we dressed, all while listening to the same music,
Exactly.
all while watching Friends and being obsessed with Friends.
watching Friends.
They hate that they're obsessed with us.
I know.
And they need to get over it.
classic.
We're friendly. We'll be nice
We're
if
here.
you just want to be nice.
Now the Gen Xers we can't talk about. They're
mad because no one pays attention to them. They had
I love interacting with Gen Xers.
They had
I understand their plight.
They had 3 or 4 movies in the 90s, and then we got the
Oh
rest.
my God, we are gonna get so many calls now. Please, we love
I
you, Gen
like
X.
the Gen Xers. I like grunge, okay? Grunge is my thing. Alice in Chains is one of my favorite
They
bands.
had more than 3 good movies though, but you know.
No, they only got attention to be advertised to for 3 movies
Oh,
before they
yes.
immediately
Sorry, we're
pivoted
done with
to us.
you. You guys had the 80s and the early 90s.
You got Hackers.
You had 16 Candles.
You got the net, and that's about it, okay? Anyway, that's where we're leaving it, Gavin.
If you're not going to call after some of that spice that we just dropped, I don't know what more you people want. I can't. I'm giving you gold here. 803-563-7169. Give us some hot takes. We'd love to hear from you guys. You can also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if you feel comfortable doing so. Stay up to date with the latest news on scetv.org and southcarolinapublicradio.org, and don't forget to support your local newspapers. The South Carolina Lede is a production of South Carolina Public Radio. Our producer is A.T. Shire. Amy Crouch is our supervising producer. Sean Birch is our executive producer. This podcast is produced with support from PRX and is made possible in part by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, as well as listener contributions to the ETV Endowment of South Carolina. For the South Carolina Lead, I'm Gavin Jackson. Be well, South Carolina.
When I tell you I actually saw my life before my eyes, I did.
No.
I did.
Do you even think about the podcast?
I was just thinking about how depressing it would be.
It would have been really depressing.
If I am dead now and I came to work. You know what I mean?